Peter Jackson's Bad Taste is quite possibly one of my favourite schlock horror campy films to chuck on prior to Halloween. I say this while knowing that we live in a world where brain dead exists, as does Terrorvision, as does Night Train to Terror. So why did I decide I'd talk about Bad Taste as opposed to any of those other films? Well, aside from it being Peter Jackson's debut feature, it's also the first film that got me into this comedy horror subgenre comprised of cheap productions, absolute insanity, nonsensical plots, and just carnage. Essentially, the film revolves around a bunch of aliens that come down to Earth that look to harvest some human flesh, human meat, and take it off planet to sell at some fast food chain. With most of the New Zealand town of Kaihoro already being wiped out, it's up to a little group of people known as the Astro Investigation and Defense Service to put an end to this group of aliens' plans. Now, as mentioned, this film really kickstarted Jackson's directing career. Most of the film was paid for by Jackson. It had a budget of around 25,000 USD, which is roughly 33,000 AUD, but a lot of that funding came in after the New Zealand Film Commission decided that they were impressed with what Jackson had done up until that point, so they decided to give him the money to finish this project. I think what really makes this film stand out is just how much Jackson is able to do with so little. You know, you have dudes in ninja costumes. Peter Jackson playing two roles. You also have Peter Jackson barfing in a bowl while others eat the barf. Now, if that doesn't epitomize the title Bad Taste, I don't know what to tell you. You also have aliens with AK-47s. You have an RPG fired at a car, because why not? You also have an RPG fired at a sheep. What I love about Peter Jackson and his films is that regardless of whether they're high budget or low budget, he's out to entertain you from the get-go. That's the intention. The first 20 or so minutes of the film where it's all sort of happening away from that house, like that alien house where they end up going to. And once they actually get to that house, that's when all the crazy sort of stuff happens. But even prior to that, Jackson is having an absolute ball with what little he has. There's lots of blood squirting, there's lots of handheld camera movements, there's lots of New Zealand kind of charm and comedy that comes through the film. And a lot of that is what keeps you entertained.
They've wiped out a small town for starters. As my guess, they'll go on to something bigger next time. Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland? Yeah, well, that wouldn't be so bad.
As someone who's usually not good with horror films, the biggest appeal for me is that comedy that comes through this film. I think watching Jackson go around and chase people to their cars, jump over people at incredible pace, make these weird alien sounds, scoop up blood from people's half blown up heads. It's all part of the joy, it's all part of the experience, and I think that's what really makes these sort of films stand out for me. You can just imagine the Tolkien estate sitting and watching this and thinking to themselves, this is really the guy we're going to give The Lord of the Rings to go and direct? Like, seriously? If you're a fan of low-budget B-movies with lots of practical effects, lots of blood squirting, and just all-out carnage, then this is quintessential viewing for you. If you're not a fan of this sort of genre of filmmaking, but you're looking to get into it, then Bad Taste is a perfect first film to start easing you into it. With all of that in mind, I'm giving Bad Taste 7 Wilhelms out of 10. If you have any thoughts on today's video, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And let me know what your favourite schlock horror B-movie is.